Let's Get To presents
Go Go Astros!
Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of Go Go Astros. Jim and I, Andy, are here. We are missing Brian. We wish him a happy Rosh Hashanah.
We did research that. It is, in fact, a happy holiday.
Right. And to all of you who celebrate, I don't think you're supposed to be using electronics right now, but thanks for listening or watching, whichever. Maybe you had somebody come and turn your computer on. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Since we've been gone, Jim, the Astros have clinched their 12th division title.
Yep.
Their 15th playoff appearance. Their 5th 100-win season. Why are we ambivalent about all this?
It's really, really weird, too, because, I had what was quickly becoming a pretty garbagey sports day on Saturday. For those of you who want to know why, please tune in to Yell Fight Suey on Wednesday. We call that a plug in the business. But
only one of us will be happy.
Literally only one of us will be happy. I don't know. I mean, like it's weird because Saturday was a game that maybe shouldn't have been the way it went. I, for one, am like, hey, I'm glad that they didn't lay down. That they kept fighting back. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Mm-hmm. And at least we're not Mariners fans because, oh my God.
Well, not only are they 7-3 in their last 10, but 3 games to play in September still because baseball is stupid and we've extended the schedule instead of just starting on time. Remember all that?
I do.
We're 17-6 this month. 17-6 in a month that most Astros fans will tell you the Astros really didn't try all that hard and they didn't play all that hard. And I'm just waiting for the playoffs to start.
Yeah,
it's such a weird juxtaposition to what you and I grew up with. And I know we talk about this on the show a lot.
Yeah,
and I'm sure our younger viewers, listeners, do not understand what we're talking about because if you became a fan in 2014, you experienced one losing season if you don't count the COVID season, where we still got a wild card. It's been nothing but roses and sunshine for you. For me, winning a division title, clinching a playoff spot is a huge deal. Because you're talking 60 plus years, and we've done it now. This will be the 16th time.
So you and I, roughly the same time. I know you sort of 81 is kind of your first real memories. Right. Mine is 86. So let's say between 80,
I'm also about 5 years older than you,
right.
So that lines up.
Yeah. So between 80 and 2000, they made the playoffs. Was it 5 times?
Yep.
This seems pretty good. Pretty good. Hold on one second, Andy. We've just been interrupted. We have to watch Aaron Judge either get walked or strike out again.
No, he was going to the shower.
That's when he's going to the shower. He's
at
the plane
in New York. He probably wakes up and showers.
He probably does. No, I don't know. I didn't get angry or upset or worried because that's dumb. I will say that that has definitely been a weekend of just checking the scores, almost being more interested in the magic number to clinch the home field, which I think is now 3. And so I don't know what it's going to be like after that happens. We might just watch Seinfeld for 5 more games or whatever it is.
Speaking of which, was trapped in a hotel room. You forget if you hadn't watched Seinfeld in a while, how incredible some of those episodes were, the things they packaged all together. You had shrinkage, you had the lobster thief, all in the same episode. I mean, those are classic bits that could have been entire different seasons.
Right.
Juji fruits, and I mean, the whole thing. Anyway, back to the Astros. So we've got 8 games left to play in the season, in the regular season. We've got a day off for the first time in 17 days.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. 17 straight games, no days off. Yet they still played well.
And Astro Twitter was in an unreasonable panic over, I guess, Thursday and Friday's games because we were shut out by the Orioles, who you've got to start respecting the Orioles for what they're building. They gave pieces away that, ostensibly like Trey Mancini should have made them better, and they didn't really fall off any. And they've got some real good pieces to build around for next year. I think when you come off a sweep of the Rays like the Astros did in fairly dominating fashion, My feeling is they took their foot off the pedal a little bit, because when you're looking at that second shutout and looking at the later innings, because I did peek in on the TV, guys in the dugout are laughing, they're having fun, they're throwing sunflower seeds at each other. This was not intense playoff atmosphere in Baltimore this weekend.
To which Astros Twitter, how dare you smile? You're down 2-0.
Yeah.
It just reminds you of what a football fan base we really have.
So we got 2 against the Diamondbacks, and then we've got another day off, and then the last 6 are against the Rays and the Phillies. Diamondbacks are moribund. I think they're 3-7 in their last 10. They're not a playoff team. They're not close to being a playoff team. But the Rays, locked for the playoffs. The Phillies, those last 3 games of the season might be a little bit interesting, because they are only in the wild card spot by 1.5 games over Milwaukee. So conceivably, that's if you play by the rules of baseball, and you hear this a lot, especially in major the NFL, well, you can't tank a game because you owe.
Wondering what your kids do online? Relax.
Hold on, I don't even know what that is. I got my information. We're good. Technical errors.
We need one of those cards. I swear.
And we're keeping it in, because I'm too lazy to edit. That's where we are in the season.
That's fine. Phillies are 1.5 games back. So, to maintain the integrity of baseball, and the fact the Astros only get to carry 28 men in this last week and a half, I guess we're playing a starting lineup for most of those games.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of Altuve getting 2 at-bats. I think the other thing that presents itself, right, is the problem of the 5 days off. And I get it. I was lobbying for the 5 days off for the first 130 games of the season, and now I'm concerned about it. But yeah, you're going to want to keep people sharp. But to your point, we don't have a 40-man roster up here for September call-ups, which I just kind of missed that a little bit.
Yeah.
I also think Astros fans need to be prepared, because like you said, Phillies are playing for their playoff lives. The Rays desperately need to stay 2 games in front of Toronto that way they keep the first seed in the American League wild card series. So, because we know the wild card, right? It's all 3 games at home. Like, it's the ultimate home field advantage move. Hey, there's no one telling us that home field advantage doesn't matter. Miss you, Brian. I'm just kidding. I do miss you, but that was a joke. But I think Astros fans might need to be prepared for maybe some immediate outcomes that aren't going to be to their liking, and remembering that they just don't matter.
Yeah. Speaking of things that don't matter, I guess, I don't get the feeling that Astros Twitter has taken their foot off the gas, but have the Astros taken their foot off the gas a little bit?
It's weird. I don't know how easy it is to really take your foot off the take you can in football, right? Like, you can obviously run the clock down. You can run out take a knee or whatever. My hope is, I actually hope so. Like, I don't want to see Jordan stretching a single into a double at this point. So whether they have or haven't, I don't fully know. I know, like, for example, Verlander's not taking the foot off the gas because he wants to cement what I think is a slam dunk Cy Young win for him. I don't know that it's going to be close, but I don't know if it's an intentional taking of the foot off the gas. I don't know that we'll see that till we start seeing lineups get really, really different, but I kind of hope so. I know that's not an answer to your question, but it's a thought.
No, and I 100% hope that Jose Altuve takes some foot off the gas and stops trying to stretch singles into doubles and stealing third when he has no chance to do so, because it's spreading, because Alex Bregman did the same thing yesterday. I don't need that virus going into the playoffs.
Right.
We are the cute bland capital of baseball, it feels like, most seasons, and Jose Altuve is leading that parade. I love Jose Altuve. He is, in my mind, a Hall of Famer, maybe not first ballot at this point, but he is on that track. But that man cannot judge how to run bases to save his life. And you'd think, being small and fast, he would have figured it out by now.
Yeah, I don't know. It has been something that's plagued him his whole career here, right? Like, he's never, I think about, like, the Astros teams again, they're going to sound like old men, but remember Bagwell, like, stole all these bases, and he's not fast, but he was a really smart base runner. Altuve's fast and not a really smart base runner.
No, he's more of the Glenn Barker feats don't fail me now school of baseball.
Yeah.
There's an old blast for you, Astros fans.
Absolutely.
One of the things that came out of the weekend, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about playoff bullpens and rotations yet, but how are you going to put Christian Javier in the bullpen after performances like this past Sunday against the Baltimore Orioles?
Yeah, I mean, before the rain delay, he was on his way for a one-hit shutout, complete game situation, because his pitch count was in really good shape. I think he was at 70 pitches after the seventh, if I've got that correct. It's funny because I absolutely jinxed the no-hitter by messaging saying, hey, Javier's pitching really well. And I looked up next batter. But to me, I don't understand the logic, because particularly with Javier not ever being a sort of reliable, but also used to being a short bullpen guy, meaning one inning. So I don't know how built he is to go multiple days in a row. And so for me, I would rather roll him out, maybe not in the division series, but in the ALCS, like every third or fourth game. I'd rather see Javier than Urquidy or Garcia, and I think Astros fans who are pushing for Hunter Brown are maybe overinflating how he's done against teams like, the Rays or whoever. Like it's so I think maybe we're overplaying that to a bit, but I definitely think he needs to be one of the top three starters in the rotation. I think he's outperformed Lance McCullers Jr. And I know that I will have people stalk me on Astros Twitter for that.
Maybe just Michael Schwab, who may actually be a sock for Lance McCullers Jr. if you start putting things together. Has anybody ever seen Lance McCullers Jr. and Michael Schwab in the same room? I haven't.
It's very Superman Clark Kent type of
thing.
Exactly.
So if I'm Lance McCullers Jr. and I want to get the pulse of the Astros fandom without revealing, all my beautiful long-haired glory, maybe I have a sock named Michael Schwab who's verified by Twitter. Maybe that's just.
And Schwab does a newsletter, not like a podcast or a video thing.
Right. It's possible. It's something to consider as we go through the season.
Feed that season.
Yeah. The thing with Javier is I would rather see him get a playoff start, and very likely not in the ALDS, because you're probably only carry 3 starters in the ALDS. So everybody's going to the bullpen in that scenario. Sure. But when you get to a potential ALCS, I said NLDS, ALDS. When you get to a potential American League Championship Series or a potential World Series, I think he suffers, and I think we all know this, he suffers because your other starting options aren't experienced coming out of the bullpen. And I think that's a failing on the Astros organization more than it is a reflection on Christian Javier. And I really hope they're taking the time to explain that to him, because if I'm him, I do really well as a starter. Then you throw me in the bullpen and throw me in really weird situations, and I don't do as well because there's a microscope on me. And maybe the numbers bear out that it's still okay, but it's a different type of pitching, a different type of getting ready. And you've been jerking me around like this for 3 seasons. I really hope there's some commitment to him next year that you are our 4th starting pitcher or our 3rd starting pitcher or however that works out. And I don't see it, but I also don't want to see Luis Garcia get a start in the playoffs. And to your point about Hunter Brown, which concerns me, is he's thrown out of the bullpen once since he's been called up.
Yeah,
and his role. Let's start doing that.
Yeah. And we had all these predictions of, we think he'll actually be a tandem starter and all of these things. So he would get used to this sort of intermediate relief thing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really feel like it's almost as if the Astros organization are forgetting that Javier was one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year. He was our Astros. He was our minor league pitcher of the year. He was our Astros Rookie of the Year.
MLB just told me that Aaron Judge, eggs for breakfast. So.
Okay, we have eggs for breakfast for Aaron Judge. And we do know that it was pancakes the last 3 games. So I definitely feel like maybe he was a little carb heavy.
If you tune in now to MLB TV, we will have a breakdown. Lauren Shahadi will be going over all of his breakfast choices for the last 6 years.
Because we don't know scrambled. We don't know if it's fried. We don't know what kind of meat.
We have a man inside. But
it seems kind of like a Canadian ham type of guy. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm really in with that. Hey, I have a stat. And can I
ham? Isn't that just ham?
But did I say Canadian ham?
You did.
Canadian bacon is just ham. That's what it is.
Right.
I have a stat, and I'm not the biggest stat guy, but I have an Astro stat that I think in many ways is the most impressive stat that we've had this season. Not only one. And it's funny because Emily Nyman of our friend from Breakball verified this because somebody was saying I was wrong. And so she's the one who did the baseball reference work for me. Only one losing streak of more than 3 games at 4 in April. I mean, that just screams incredibly consistent baseball that even the 2019 team or the 17 team didn't have.
Well, I think it's, I was looking up something else this morning because I remembered yesterday, and we talked about it before, but the Astros finished up their road part of their regular season schedule with only one losing road trip the entire season. And that was a 3-4 trip in late August. I looked at home. Home was a little bit worse. They had 2 losing homestands the entire season. One was in the first homestand in April, and one was in June. They both went 2-4 in both of those. Beyond that, every time they've taken the field for an extent, from some calculation of a week, basically, they haven't lost that week.
Right.
Brian, when he's here, likes to talk about the 6th of the season. We've won all the 6 of the seasons. With 8 to play, I feel pretty confident with the 17-6 record this month. We win this one too, regardless of what happens. So it's very, very. I think it's very, very telling of what we could see in the playoffs if the playoffs were a normal environment, which we all know they're not. So,
yeah, and I think it's interesting because one, I would prefer. It's weird how I almost I can't say I didn't feel confident in 2019. Obviously, I think that was I really thought they'd go 11-0. So shows you what I know about baseball. But to me, you have to feel comfortable about this particular team because they don't seem to. They're not streaky. They're just consistently good. And I think you factor in Minute Maid Park as being a top playoff environment in all of sports, not just baseball. And I know we talk about 1-run games, maybe their luck and all that stuff, but I think you win enough of them, then you go up to bat or you go out to pitch going, I already know how to win in this. So it breeds its self-confidence. And so in many ways, I feel really good about this team going into the playoffs and at least getting to the World Series.
So one more quick Astros note, and I wanted to ask you as we keep selling ourselves as longtime fans, this is the 5th time the Astros have won 100 games in a season. Mm-hmm. As a fan who grew up with 500 being the goal and oftentimes not reaching that goal, what does a 100-win season mean to you, especially knowing that you've seen 4 of the 5 in the last 6 years?
It means everything to me. And I was trying to explain this in a private message thing with our friend Emily, where it's just a different environment being an Astros fan. And it's funny because we celebrate being over 500 because that wasn't a thing. I think when you win 100 games, particularly with the perception of what the Houston market is for baseball, whether it's real or not, at this point, I know what I think it is, that it's always going to be a market that's sort of disadvantaged by Major League Baseball, that they don't have the resources. Again, that might even be factually incorrect at this point. But to me, I think it means everything. And I think we would have been disappointed. We came into this season, I think all of us thought 95, 96-ish wins. So I think it shows how over our expectations they've played. I think it means everything. I think we should continue as fans to celebrate being over 500 because in baseball that is an accomplishment. And then I think we need to celebrate winning divisions and celebrate winning 100 games and all of that stuff, because I don't know that we'll whenever this run ends, and I think we both agree, right, that we think there's at least 3 years left in it at minimum.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But everything seems lined up that way. We don't know if you and I in our lifetime are ever going to see this again. So right. I think we definitely should be how do you I know you celebrate the little things too. I mean, what does it mean to you?
It means to me that regardless of what happens in the playoffs, and I can say this based on 2019 as the most recent example, regardless of what happens in the playoffs from a regular season standpoint, you were one of the best teams in the history of baseball. Because I guess 2019 notwithstanding, because there were 4 or 5 teams that won 100 games that year, it's not something that is accomplished every year. And I think if you look at our projections, like you said, we're mid 90s for wins for this team. The national pundits, if they even thought that we were going to win the division, which a lot of them had written us off because Seattle was the big up and coming team, were more like 88 to 90 wins. And so you've blown that projection out of the water. So, you know, we talked about James Click and his situation last week a little bit. Whatever happens, he maintained or put together or added to a team that won triple-digit baseball games in a season. That's a big deal. That's a nice check for his resume, and it's a huge deal for our franchise and the way we're viewed from a baseball perspective. Because I think you're finally starting to see a lot of the national pundits, Dan Clark notwithstanding,
who by the way, has gone private on Twitter again.
Of course, because, you know, they didn't win the series, are starting to understand that we are seeing a very, very, very good team for a very, very long time from a baseball perspective. It's not a flash in the pan. It wasn't a banging on the trash can situation that got them the season in 2017. And it's certainly, whatever happened in 2017 doesn't explain what's happened since then. And so, I think we all said in the winter of 2020, when this all came out, it's up to the Astros to prove that this didn't matter. And I think they 100% have done that.
Yeah, and especially overcoming a not great 2020 season, which, admittedly was weird because it was the whole COVID year thing. I think they actually have proved it. And I think you're starting to even see it from other fan bases of it's becoming the same reason people hate the Warriors. It isn't just hating us because, oh my God, they banged a trash can once, but how are they consistently so good? And
Yep.
I love that we're getting to that level.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about Astros. One more thing before we wrap up. Two other things happened in baseball this last week, neither of which were actually records, by the way. The first, and I think most important from a baseball history perspective, Albert Pujols hit his 700th home run against the Dodgers in LA. Hit 2 in the game, I believe, to get to 699, 700. And then, of course, we have the never-ending chase that Aaron Judge is having, which I am being told by at least 3 different apps on my phone is a historic achievement to chase 7th place in baseball by Aaron Judge for the single season home run record, which he's not going to reach. He's shooting for 7th, right? A tie for 7th right now. So, A, why are these things important to baseball for the non-baseball fan maybe? And B, why do I have to care so much more about Aaron Judge breaking what is essentially the team record for the New York Yankees versus a career longevity mark for Albert Pujols?
I'll do Aaron Judge first because I'm I'm on record, despite the fact that he's been a bit of a putz to Altuve. I actually think Aaron Judge is good for the game. I like Aaron Judge. What I don't like, and I think is proof positive to many of the things you and I have been talking about on whatever version of this show is taken, be it part of Let's Get To or be it standalone, is that the Yankees are just treated differently. And I think that you've taken a baseball community that had a lot of goodwill about seeing him, break a Yankee record, and the Yankees. It's like if you become the best quarterback in Cowboys history, right? Like you have to stop and reflect on everything that means. But people are now getting angry about it because to the degree to which it's shoved down our throats. Take the Pujols thing. I would love to have seen more because we talk about 100 wins for the Astros, but 700 home runs for a player. How many times has that been done? 4?
Counting Albert Pujols? Yes, 4.
Yeah, 4 times, right? And to me, though, it also buys into the sort of delusional thought process we talked about last week of, well, Barry Bonds is 70, doesn't really count because he was roiding. Look, Major League Baseball says it counts. It counts. I'm happy for Yankee fans. I'm happy for Aaron Judge, but I hate the fact that it's being shoved down our throat the way it is. I mean, heck, did you get any of A&M Arkansas interrupted? Because I definitely got.
No, the game was over, thankfully, but I was, flipping around to multiple channels actually on Saturday watching college football, and all of the channels were broken into, which is just, if you were chasing the single season home run record for baseball, I'd get it.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that the only reason we're hearing about this, because I know I've heard Yankees fans, and I don't begrudge Aaron Judge anything. He's a great player, and I hope he breaks it. Matter of fact, I wish he would have broken it yesterday instead of a rain delay, so I wouldn't have to keep hearing about it. But I hope he reaches it, and I hope he reaches it soon, take the pressure off, whatever. But this is part of why you have 29 other teams that feel they're playing at a disadvantage when it comes to Major League Baseball. And when Rob Manfred comes out and says, oh, we're a regional game and we're 20 or 30 individual companies that just come together for this thing, it just feeds into that whole conspiratorial, something's going on out of our control. And as we've learned as Americans over the last 6 years, we don't like things that are out of our control. So we steer into the conspiracies. The conspiracy is that if you do something in New York, it matters more to Major League Baseball than if you do it anywhere else.
Right.
Because if Aaron Judge was playing for the Kansas City Royals and was sitting on 60 home runs right now, you wouldn't get break-ins and you wouldn't get more than a cryon across the bottom of the board on any of these sports channels hours after it happened.
You might get a shot of the home run coming out of a break between innings. By the way, this thing happened an hour ago.
Right.
Meanwhile,
Nestor Cortez has thrown a 5-hitter. So let's talk about that for 28 minutes.
Nasty Nestor,
who is a great pitcher. Love him. Wouldn't mind having him on my team. But it's just this ridiculous elevation. And I think what irritates most people like Yankees fans is that if you talk to some Yankees fans, I think Emily's one of the exceptions to this. You talk to some Yankees fans and go, well, of course it matters more. It's the Yankees. And that's just not how successful sport leagues are run.
Right. Right.
I give you a lot of crap for being a Cowboys fan, even though you grew up in Houston. You embrace your Cowboys fandom. But the NFL does not pretend that a Cowboys championship means more than a Packers championship, than a Patriots championship, than a 49ers championship. It doesn't matter because the league is winning. And Major League Baseball has still not gotten that through their heads. And I think that, more than anything else, is what irritates me every time I get an alert on my phone about, oh no, he's switched shower shoes. Chase for 60 is on.
Yeah, well, we talked about that on the show, and I'm assuming we'll get into that even more in the offseason. But yeah, like the NFL has a league first mentality. Major League Baseball has a 3 markets and everyone else mentality. And then it has to be incredibly frustrating for them when those markets, particularly the number 1 market, doesn't win. Because, by the way, it's been, 11, 12 years since they've won a World Series. So it does seem like we complain about the sport dying. And then, people pop up and say, well, it made more money than ever. Well, because TV dollars are overinflated because there's nothing else that can be ad supported.
Ticket prices are up 700% from the 80s.
And the fact is when now that everybody's streaming and downloading and DVRing and fast forwarding through commercials, everything that's reliant on advertising dollars is overinflated in its value. So let's pump the brakes on how successful Major League Baseball really is. It has to be frustrating. It's frustrating as a fan because I always go into it going like, I want it to be a kumbaya, let's all enjoy this great game. But when push comes to shove, it's not that way.
Well, I think you said it all. I think that wraps us up for this episode of Go Go Astros. Any final words before we go Stros?
Well, I have some final words for Go Stros, but no, nothing between that. Oh, I did want to ask you real quick, and yeah, it's a little meandering, but I know take 30 seconds, scale of 1 to 10. If you're a Mariners fan, how worried are you about a player this young that's already starting to deal with back issues?
Well, they've distracted themselves by signing Castillo to a 5-year deal, which good for them. I think they had to with the players they gave up because you had to have some return beyond just next season with them. It's interesting. I don't know that I'm concerned yet. I would be concerned for this playoff season because I guess they're matched up with Cleveland right now, who has been playing better. And if Rodriguez isn't on the team by the time they take the trip to Cleveland, they could be 3 and done or 2 and done.
I'd be 2 and done, yeah.
Pretty easily.
Shout out to Ed Rivera of the Dad Hat Chronicles and he hates the logo, but he loves his Guardians.
Yeah, and I appreciate the significance for the Mariners about just making the playoffs, but it'll get that we're happy to be there. It gets pretty old pretty quick. And they're going to have a return on that. I sat with a Mariners fan when I went to the Mariners-Yankees game back in August, I guess, or July. I don't remember what it was. July. And he was concerned because there just wasn't as much coming up from AAA over the next couple of years as there has been over the last couple of years. And they gave away, I think, 3 or 4 of their top prospects to make the deals they made, which good for them because they could have turned into the Padres, who won every deal at the All-Star break or the trade deadline and proceeded to tank precipitously.
Yeah.
But the Mariners are now stuck in this kind of limbo of we either have to get better with the players we have or we have to continue to make deals giving away more young players. So it'll be interesting to see. I think if they're 2 and out, that Scott Service might be looking for a job. And I know that doesn't really answer your question. Yeah, I'd be concerned if my young player that I just signed to a 20-year contract for $500 billion has back problems in his early 20s.
Yeah.
Maybe he can overcome it. Maybe it's minor, but
maybe Carlos has a masseuse he can.
Yeah, or a lay flat airplane. There's lots of options out there.
Lots of options.
All right, so I think that wraps us up for Go Go Astros. I'm Andy. That's Jim.
So before I throw out my Go Stros, one again, happy Rosh Hashanah to Brian, and I actually am a big fan. I have a lot of Jewish friends, big fan of the Jewish community. So happy Rosh Hashanah to all of you. And also, no matter what happens, hook 'em horns. Go Stros.
I can't follow that up. Go Stros.
Go Go Astros is a presentation from Twitchy Dolphin Media and part of the Let's Get To Baseball Network.